All right, y'all. So today is day 9, and the momentum is good. Energy is good. Be getting up early in the morning, go to bed late at night. That whole find your obsession that we talked about a few days ago is real. What I've also realized is real is the struggle to name things as they are. I'm a real honest motherfucker. I believe in telling the truth. I don't believe in sugarcoating a lot. A lot of times I have to make sure that my tone and my delivery is compatible with my message. Because when it's real, and I'm going to deliver it passionately in a regard that acknowledges whatever the truth is that I'm speaking. And I do that unapologetically. I also recognize that communication is just as important for the deliverer as it is for the receiver. And you cannot take your ass to Mexico speaking Swahili and look at the people crazy because they don't understand the language when you are the deliverer. So if you're going to speak to people in Mexico, you might want to know a little Spanish because that's their language. And it's the same with ourselves, right? So the other thing that I'm realizing is that when it comes to telling the truth about ourselves, we've got to be able to tell the truth about ourselves to ourselves in a palatable way that we can eat it. Because none of us like to hear or experience criticism, although it is necessary for us to be able to know where we need to grow. And I had a lesson today in work, and it brought a lot of things full circle for me. But we were actually talking about social justice work and organizing. But I always look at that in terms of my life because our lives are structures. They require organization. If we don't take the time to do that, they will become chaotic, just like anything else. And he said, you can know something and not acknowledge it. And boy, that thing struck deep because I could see myself in it. I could see myself in it, and I could see so many of the parallels of things that were around me and in my life that mirrored that exact same thing that had not been articulated before. People can know something and not name it. People know when they need to do better, won't always acknowledge that. People know when they done somebody wrong, don't always acknowledge that. People know when they not giving their best, don't always acknowledge that. People know when they could be helping somebody else a little bit more, don't always acknowledge that. People know when they could be helping themselves a little bit more, don't always acknowledge that. I mean, like, there are a lot of things that we know that we don't acknowledge because they're not comfortable. And then a lot of times when we do acknowledge them, it's not because we are naming them as something that we know that exists that needs to be changed, but it's something that we are naming as a means to excuse what exists, right? So, like, I think by clinical standards, all of us have dealt with some form of mental illness at some point or another, okay? And I say by clinical standards because they got a lot of fucking standards out there, okay? And some of what they consider illness, I actually consider superpowers, and I watch them work every day in people, okay? Just depends on what kind of story you give them and what direction you take them and lead them in terms of how to address and move around that. But I look at people every day, take the words and stories of other people and make those acknowledgments their truth, even when they know better or know different. And I say that not to say that that field is not real. It is. They do some work that's good. They do. I do think doctors are important, and I do think people should go consult them. I do. I also think people must be wise enough to trust themselves because modern medicine has its own agendas other than healing. I do. So I do think both things can exist concurrently at the same time, and one does not detract from another's truth or existence. And a lot of people don't like that. They feel like you got to pick a side. It's just like, yeah, nah, these things can mutually exist. They can. Anyway. But with that, I also know that we have to determine our own stories. Like we do. Otherwise, people will give us a story even if they're not trying to, right? So being able to look at yourself, acknowledge and name what's going on with you is important. It's more important than just knowing it. You know what I'm saying? Knowing is the first step. You know what I'm saying? You can't acknowledge something that you don't know. You can't acknowledge something that you don't know. But the other thing that I recognize is there's a move from knowing to acknowledging, and another move from acknowledging to recognizing. Because when you acknowledge something, often it's because you're now becoming aware that it exists. Okay? It's there. I know it's there. I don't want to acknowledge it's there. Take, for example, folk who got a real, like a physical illness in their body. I use myself for an example. I've been hurting in my body, like real sharp, severe pains for over the last 6 months. Just went to the doctor this week. 6 months. Knew it was there. Knew. Didn't acknowledge it. Knew it was there. The best acknowledgement I gave it was like a heating pad, ibuprofen. It was like, man, you ain't got time for this. And I'm a real, oh, you could take that, move through it kind of person. Knew it was there. Felt like I had it under control. Didn't have a need to acknowledge it till it made sure that I felt it and I couldn't ignore it no more. And it was like, hey, bitch, you gonna learn my name. You gonna figure out who the fuck I am. I am here. You hear me? We are here together. You know it. You gonna see me though. And I was like, whoa, because I started feeling that. And the truth behind that is that it did require acknowledgement. Meaning that I got to go figure out what this is for the first time. And once I know what it is for the first time, and I now can make an association between what I once knew existed, the experience, the pain, the reality, everything that came with it. And then I can put a name to that. And then I can recognize it for the future. You know what I'm saying? It's a stair-stepping process. Because once you can acknowledge it one time, then you should be able to point out the parallels and the similarities or the things that are coming back into your experience like that again. So that you can mitigate making the same poor decisions, or so that you can make a better decision or a different decision. But if you don't know what it is that you're doing it about, you can't even be honest about what you know is happening in your life, in your reality, in your experience, regardless of where it's coming from or who's contributing to it or all the things that come with it. Man, those things are first. And a lot of times when it comes to not only just pain and negative things, but even positive things, a lot of times people are good to us, really good to us, and we know that, and we don't say thank you enough. We don't say I love you enough. We're going to say, hey, you matter to me. I care about you. Thank you for being in my life. We don't acknowledge folk the way we should on any spectrum. Any spectrum. And that starts with ourselves. The way we regard ourselves is a direct reflection of how we regard other people, which is why I have to be mindful not to be too hard on myself, to be graceful with myself. Because when I'm not, it impedes on the grace that I'm able to give to other people. And I'm a very graceful motherfucker. I love to be graceful. I love to give. I love to love. I love all things virtuous. I do. Even when I got to stretch myself to engage in them, I'm not opposed. Because that helps my own expansion. It helps my own development. But I also have to acknowledge, man, in this place, what I'm learning in this solitude challenge, number one is that healing is cool. It's cool to be able to spend time with yourself and to be able to learn you in ways that are intimate to your soul that other people don't know you. And it also empowers you to be able to share and to live with other folk differently, to be able to engage in life in another way. And that's important too. That's important too, man. You know, we learn that things are a certain way, and then a lot of times I don't know that we ever learn another way. And when we do, it's because we teach ourselves. Or experience teaches us, one of the two, because a lot of times we learn and we wasn't trying to. But the beauty of being able to do this on purpose and what it is producing has been a beautiful thing to me. And so I give thanks because I ain't trying to just know something is there and needs to be acknowledged and not acknowledge it anymore. I think I made my mind up about that earlier this week, man. You got to be okay knowing your pain. You got to be okay touching it. You got to be okay looking in the mirror naked and unashamed. You got to be okay being real with yourself at all costs. Because our lives depend on that, man. When we're not able to be honest with ourselves, everything else around us is illusory. Everything. I can't afford to live in an illusion. We got shit to do, y'all. We got shit to do. And so, tell your truth to yourself. Be okay telling that truth. You know what I'm saying? Know the things that you know, but do not be afraid to name them or acknowledge them. Name them and acknowledge them, especially the ones that you know need to be touched, whether it be good or bad, whether it be appreciation that you need to give or care and concern. Tell the truth about that shit. And then, as you acknowledge these things, make sure you take note of what it is you are acknowledging so that you can recognize it in the future. You ain't got to keep repeat doing this shit over and over again. Because hopefully as we learn better, we do better. And if we do better, then our practice becomes better. And then we don't do those same habits that didn't serve us before. This is all about an evolution of being. And the only way we grow to be different is to first think different and to make a decision that we're going to do different in our hearts. Ain't nothing more powerful than a made up mind. I say that shit all the time. But a lot of times we be on the fence, lukewarm, gray area, don't want to make up our mind about shit. We want to walk the middle way. And the middle way is important at different times. But I don't think the middle way is a decision. It's not always a decision-making tool. And when it is, we got to also have in our toolbox the things we need to make assessments on how the middle way should be applied. So for me, I feel like it's good to compromise when you are in the midst of creation. Not when you're in the midst of deciding on what's there. If you got two choices, you got to choose between them two choices, unless they just don't work. That's what I'm saying. Then you got to create another way. So if creation ain't involved in the gray, ain't no gray. It's black and white for me. And I don't know that I've explained that well enough for everybody to understand. At this point, that's a whole video in and of itself, and I'm okay with that. But those three things today became very critical in terms of looking in the mirror and self-assessing. And so I just wanted to share them with you, to go through the things that you got happening in your life and the various things that you got emotions around and feelings around, and to begin to inventory. What are the things that I know about my reality, about myself, about my experience? Does it reflect what I want it to? And if it does or it don't, man, what do I need to acknowledge in order to begin shape-shifting that, in order to begin to convert it into an experience that I can feel like that about? I can feel empowered by it and know that it is functionally serving a purpose that I can be connected to and correlate things with. And then as I do this, man, make my acknowledgments and figure out how to recognize and do something different and move forward, man. We the ones we've been waiting for. I ain't waiting on shit else. What I know is the more I do my work, the more the other people who are doing theirs find me and I find them. And that is what I call alignment. And we in a time now where everybody's tribes is linking up. We finding each other. So if you have found your way to this page, I thank you for being here, and I thank you for your energy and for sharing. And my hope and my prayer is that I have said something on today that has been useful to you, period. That's the goal, is to add value all 2021 and beyond, man. Because who? We've been waiting on who? Us. And I'm finna go to bed. Yeah, have a good one. I see y'all tomorrow, day 10, man. We almost halfway through this thing. You hear me?